as Rolly wrote so beautifully about in the Torah Shabbat, we are in a season of change and transition and trying to find our footing. And I want to acknowledge in this season of change that we've had a group of members of the community led by Leah Silver, who's our vice president and has been the head of the search committee for the past, it's been almost 6 months at this point. And I want to acknowledge Leah's incredible, graceful, wise, and diligent leadership, and invite also all the other members of the search committee who are here to rise, just to be recognized that this is a very intensive effort. Ellen Metzger, Toby Baldinger, Jacob Complain, Laura Spire is here. I know Rebecca Rosenthal is not able to be here today, and Joel Kazis, as well as Alan Mantle and Ali Vinny. And did I forget anyone? I think that's it. So thank you for so many hours of work in planning the job description and all the work to put out the job, and then all the efforts to interview candidates and get us to this moment, which is very significant, of bringing our lead finalist this Shabbat, which many of you know, but not everyone knows. And it's particularly moving. I think Rolly and I both last night, it's hard to get through even the bio without getting emotional, just because we've had a very robust process, dozens of candidates. Leah, I think, and I interviewed 11 people. The search committee interviewed 7 people. And so to arrive at this moment with someone whom we know so deeply, at least Rolly and I know so deeply, and the committee has got to know over this last period, is a very special and moving moment to have our student come back as a teacher. Rabbi Alex Braver is a former BJ Rabbinic Fellow. He was here from 2013 to 2016. He brings a deep well of compassion, intellectual curiosity, and spiritual creativity to his rabbinate. He currently serves as Congregation Tiferet Israel in Columbus, Ohio, where he is known for his joyful approach to learning, his nurturing presence with children and families, and his heartfelt accompaniment of community members through celebration and sorrow. Rabbi Braver is also the author of a forthcoming book, The Snail in the Shell, 70 Faces of God, World and Self, which actually Rolly and I got a preview last spring at the Fellows Retreat. When? He's due to write the prologue. Oh, beautiful. Which is a passion project exploring the surprising and creative metaphors for God and spiritual life in traditional Hasidic texts, with original translation and commentary. A graduate of Brandeis University, Rabbi Braver first dedicated himself to a year of service as a math and English teacher at a charter school in Boston. He then pursued Jewish intensive study at the Hadar Institute's egalitarian yeshiva before receiving rabbinic ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary in 2016, along with an MA in Midrash and a certificate in pastoral counseling and care. He lives in Columbus with his husband, Alex Weissler, who's here, and works at the Joint Distribution Committee with a lot of BJ members. And their 2 young children, Ezra and Margot, who I think will appear in a little while, and their dog, Benji, who will not appear in a little while. In quieter moments, he enjoys Jewish mysticism, long runs, sci-fi novels, and vegan restaurants. Baruch haba, and welcome home.
I don't know which microphone to use. It's a new setup since 10 years ago. Also, I could use just about 5 minutes to go cry in the robing room, if that's okay, and I'll be right back. I'll pull it together. About 10 years ago, I was sitting upstairs in Rolly's office in the community house behind us. I had just accepted an offer to serve as the assistant rabbi of this large conservative synagogue in Columbus, Tifereth Israel, my home for the last 10 years. And I was checking in with Rolly and sort of sharing my excitement and my fears and my worries about leaving New York and the great unknown of anything, sort of west of the river, and and the fears of leaving BJ, which were very strong, and it was a particular sting to say goodbye to BJ at the time. And he said to me, I promised myself I was not going to do the accent now, so I will not do it now. I'll save it for the search committee on Sunday, maybe, as part of my interview. But he said, you're going to go out to Columbus, and you're going to get settled, and you're going to get to your new office and start to meet people and lead services, and one day you're going to say, why did Hashem send me here? And you'll ask yourself that in moments of exasperation, and in moments of joy, and in moments of curiosity, and over time that answer will become clear. Why did Hashem send me here? And for a decade, he was right in that I've had many moments of asking myself that question, and many different answers depending on the day. And through it all, I've had the very consistent joy of circling back here to BJ to check in, to return for rejuvenating retreats with the other BJ rabbinic fellows in the network every couple of years, and soaking up the soulfulness of Shabbat here when I was in town for conferences or to see family. I got to travel to Costa Rica with Marcelo a number of years back and join in one of his mindfulness retreats. I've circled back here in joyful moments and in painful moments. I've circled back here looking for inspiration and also coming to share my own inspiration and my own growth. I lived a lot of life when I was a fellow here, 2013 to 2016. I met my husband. I got married by Felicia. I mourned my mother's passing here, sat Shiva, walked into Lecha Dodi down that aisle in an unforgettable, powerful moment. I sat Shiva for her in my 89th Street apartment. And I've lived a lot of life since leaving and going to Columbus. I got a dog, a house, a mortgage, 4 cars over the course of 10 years, 2 are blessed memory, 2 kids, and some significant gray in my beard and temples, which you may notice. And through it all, BJ has remained my North Star, this steady reminder of my core values as a Jew and a rabbi and a person. And so to be standing here in this moment and in this context is really a tremendous honor. This week, we will read about a similar recurring theme in the life of Yaakov, of Jacob, and his own circling back again and again to one particular holy place. Of course, we'll read about Jacob's dramatic wrestling with the angel and his fraught reunion with his brother and other stories, painful and powerful. But I'm most intrigued this year by the end of the Parashat when Jacob gets a reminder from God to return to Beit El. Beit El is the place where he had once built an altar to God when he was fleeing from Esav, his brother, who had sworn to kill him. And it was the place where, as a young man, in that moment of flight, he had dreamed of a ladder or a stairway stretching to heaven with angels ascending and descending. And it was the place where he woke up, it was many years before, and said, Ma norah hamakom hazeh, how amazing, how awesome is this place. And back then, filled with awe, but still on the run from his murderous brother, and with nothing to his name but his walking stick and a rock he had turned into a pillow, he made a promise, he made a vow that if God would support him through his difficulty, he would return and consecrate this site, Beit El. But according to the rabbis of the Midrash, Jacob seems to have delayed fulfilling the promise to reconsecrate the site even once he'd come back to the land, until the very end of the Parsha, when God says, get up and go to Beit El. And the rabbis, noticing this, they say in the Midrash, Amar Rabbi Abba bar Kahana, Rabbi Abba bar Kahana said, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yaakov, the Holy Blessed One says to Jacob, Bisha'at akata nidra, at the moment of difficulty you vowed, Bisha'at revacha shamte. But at the moment of calm, of expansiveness, of ease, you forgot. At the moment of difficulty, you vowed. At the moment of ease, you forgot. And so now, years later, Jacob has a dozen plus children, more than 2 wives, maybe at least kind of 2 wives or more, untold herds and property. And why has he not fulfilled his promise? Why has he delayed? Why does he need a reminder from God at this moment for God to say, Kumale el Beit El, get up and go to Beit El? Better late than never, right? That's true that he gets up and goes and builds an altar, but he maybe shouldn't have needed the reminder. Still, Beit El is not done with Yaakov, and the narrative for a whole chapter seems to linger around this place as life continues to happen to him. Deborah, the nursemaid of his mother, Rebecca, dies, and Deborah is buried right by Beit El, and according to the Midrash, the rabbis imagine that also at that same moment his mother dies. Rebecca also dies herself. And then we have another story where Jacob again returns to Beit El, the same place, and God renames him, gives him a second repetition of the name change from Jacob to Israel, the God wrestler, at this same place, Beit El. And then Jacob again sets up a pillar and consecrates it again. And then as he sets out from Beit El, his wife Rachel dies in childbirth, and she's buried along the way. And he sets up yet another pillar, another monument, a gravestone this time, all around the same place of Beit El. And so Jacob seems to have 2 opposite reactions to this place, I think, in the course of his life. The first is delay, right? Bisha'at akata nidra, the moment of difficulty you vow. Bisha'at revacha shamte, but once things are good, you forget, you delay. But his soul can feel the pull to this place, and once he does return, he is circling it again and again around this holy site and this place that holds the memory of awe and wonder of Manorah HaMakom Hazeh. How amazing is this place, the memory of angels, the memory of fleeing, the memory of trial and tribulation, the memory also, as he continues through his life, the memory of searing grief for his mother's nurse and his mother and his wife, all circling this same place. I think I know this feeling. There are times in my life where I have felt very connected to my own Beit El, not necessarily a physical place, but part of my core being, my own house of God, my own inner place where God dwells within me. I think about the moment after my mom died, and I remember very clearly this sense of tunnel vision, or of blinders, like horse blinders, and all the other mishigas in my life did not matter. It disappeared, and I could only focus on a few core things and a few core people, and all the other stuff was just mishigas, and it was frivolous, and it kind of fell away. And I promised myself when I could kind of breathe again, I'm never going to forget what it means to have that focus, to know what's really important. I promised myself. And then, of course, Bishat Revacha Shamte, right? And, then you got to do the laundry, and you got, things are good, and the mishigas kind of creeps in at the edges of your vision, and you can't quite get rid of it. I think about this same feeling, my wedding day. I think about this when my kids were born. I found that same sort of sense of this is what matters. Here at prayer in BJ, back in Ohio at my congregation, on retreats, I get that feeling sometimes if I'm in the zone, teaching, preaching, running when I was on sabbatical on the beach in Tel Aviv. That was a particularly powerful moment, or running on a random Thursday along the Alum Creek Trail in Columbus, Ohio. But always, Bishat Revacha Shamte, right? There's always things get calm again, and you forget. And there's laundry to do, and there's emails to answer, and there's diapers to change. Although my daughter I'm very proud. She's in her first couple days of no diapers. So we're working on it. I don't want to jinx anything, but that's its own sort of stress, right? So I think this is a very common experience of Bishat Akata Nidra, Bishat Revacha Shamte, right? We always forget what it means to return to the Beit El, the sort of house of God. And so this, I think, is why having Yaakov sort of circling Beit El for this whole chapter feels like maybe a moment of growing maturity for Jacob, and a moment that also epitomizes what a community or a synagogue like BJ or any spiritual community, but especially this one, it epitomizes what it ought to be about. And it's not only Ma Norah HaMakom Hazeh, right? Wow, this is incredible. I'm swept away off my feet. I'm in Costa Rica. I'm having an experience. Those moments are so important. But it's also about creating the sacred center and the charged holy place that we feel drawn back to, and that anchors us not just in the moments of overwhelming joy or overwhelming grief or moments of feeling scared, but the place where we turn over and over again, the place we circle back to again and again and again to check in with our deepest values when we're celebrating, when we're grieving, and in the inevitable moments where we realize we have forgotten the vows that we've made to ourselves and to each other and to God. This is not just a physical place, Beit El, the house of God. It's something deeper. When Rachel, his wife, dies in childbirth en route from Beit El to Ephrat, Jacob doesn't turn back to Beit El. He sort of pulls the biblical car over to the side of the road, and he does this ritual there on the side of the road, the same ritual that he learned at Beit El. He knows he doesn't need to go back there every time. It's not about the place. And so he builds a matzeva, this pillar, the monument to Rachel, because I think in some way he knows Beit El has sort of come to live inside of him now in a deeper way. And this is the secret that we as Jews have learned the hard way in our history through exile and through everything, that we take our sacred spaces with us. So for communities and for societies and for people, we circle around, we circle back, we vow to live up to what we learn in these core moments, and then we drift away again, and then we return again, and then we drift away again. And like Jacob, our journeying patriarch, we wrestle, we struggle, we vow, we forget, and then we are reminded and we vow again. And like Jacob, we are promised a new name of Yisrael, the one who struggles, and that name reflects not only who we are, but who we aspire to be. And then we lose sight of that, and we become Yaakov again, just plain old Jacob. And then we remember, and we become Yisrael again for a moment. And then we go back to being Jacob, and that's just the journey. The looping return back and forth from Beit El to Beit El reminds me of what Jewish life and spiritual life are about. Not just one transcendent moment, but building a life around the search and the circling of those moments. It's about building communities that are elastic enough to support us through those moments, and building ritual and study and prayer and action that are all sort of primed to bring us back to that place when we inevitably vow and forget. It is, to me, like the teaching of Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, 19th century Rebbe, one of my Hasidic Rebbe friends, who quotes the line from Proverbs, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam, right? Sheva yipol tzadik, the righteous, the tzadik, falls 7 times, v'kam, and gets up again. And he says, it's the Sheva yipol tzadik, it's the 7 falls that allow the rise. The falling itself and the drifting and the forgetting and the circling back, even 7 times. That is what allows us to get up and to rise higher and to grow. And so in my own circling around BJ these many years, it's not only the physical space, although I really do love being here, and I think this is genuinely the most gorgeous sanctuary in the world, personally speaking. I'm not just pandering. Doesn't hurt, though. But it's really about the circling and returning to the matzeva, the pillar that is inside, and that pillar of the values that this place stands for and circles back to, and drifts and circles back and drifts and circles back. And I know that BJ is a place that is constantly in this process of circling, departing, returning, and checking back in with what is the matzeva, what is the pillar, what is the Beit El of this place, what is the house of God at the center of this community, what is the Torah that guides it, what is it that this community aspires to be. And like Jacob, it is laser focused on that Beit El, the sacred center. And then there's budgets, and there's committees, and there's stuff, and there's staff, and all the things that happen. And then always, 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 it circles back, course corrects, and it finds the true north, always engaged in that holy quest of circling closer and closer and closer to the core. And so at this moment of transition for the community, as the community finds its feet and sees the earth spread beneath it as a firm foundation held up by God, as we keep an eye on the matzeva, the pillar, the Beit El, the home of God at the center of this community's commitments to each other, to God, to each other, to the world. That's the heart, I think, of the whole thing. That's the most important challenge. And I know it is one that this community is well equipped to meet. Shabbat Shalom.